will build on our progress at the border with additional resources for our law enforcement personnel, so that they can stem the flow of illegal crossings and speed the return of those who do cross over.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. Suspend the Syrian refugee program and keep radical Islamic terrorists the hell out of our country.
Meanwhile, explain what happened at 7-Elevens. ICE agents raided 7-Elevens across the country early yesterday morning in search of employees who were in the country illegally and managers who knowingly employed them. What?
Extreme venom. Extreme. Oh, it's going to be extreme.
Sean, not only law enforcement lives, but American lives. The residents of Oakland, their lives are on the line. They talk about, the Democrats talk time and time again about they don't want to break up families. Well, I would ask them, what about the families of Kate Steinle and Jamil Shaw II, killed by illegal immigrants? What about those families? Do those families matter? You're putting a lot of lives on the line. And this mayor, if one of those illegal immigrants then goes out and harms someone or God forbid kills someone, she has blood on her hands. I hope she sleeps well at night.
On the House floor today, Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi set a new record for the longest ever floor speech, opposing a budget deal that doesn't include protection for immigrants known as Dreamers.
We will bring back our jobs. We will bring back our borders. We will bring back our wealth. And we will bring back our dreams.
And we've known it ever since the President of the United States broke the promise to Dreamers.
H-1B visas are awarded in a totally random round, and that's wrong. Instead, they should be given to the most skilled and highest paid applicants, and they should never ever be used to replace Americans.
Hi everyone, welcome to Great Debate 13. My name is Victoria Phelps and I'm the current Vice President of Education at the EA.
And my name is Russell Chudderwitz. I'm a Penn State professor here in the Department of Economics. Hey Victoria, did you hear the economics joke?
No, I didn't.
How many economists does it take to screw in a light bulb?
I don't know.
7.
Why is that?
1 to screw it in and 6 to hold the rest of the world constant.
Gotta love those classic econ jokes, Chad.
Thank you.
So welcome again to the Great Debate. This is our 13th annual Great Debate here, and today, as you probably noticed from the promo video, is whether or not we should strengthen or relax our immigration laws in the United States today. So we have 2 teams debating about that.
And you can think of it as a needle in the middle. And you know how lefty is loosey immigration laws? That's Team McLeod on the left. Righty, tighten immigration laws, that's Professor Boyle's team on the right. Before we get started, we'll get started in a second. 2 things. 1, please respect your fellow Penn Staters like you would want to be respected yourself. And 2, the teams were actually chosen with a coin flip, so it's really easy to give a disclaimer. The views expressed by the participants in this debate are not necessarily theirs, the department, the EAs, the universities, whatever, right? So it's a coin flip and we should have a lot of fun tonight. So Victoria, introduce Team Boyle.
Yeah, before I get to that, just a social media note. We do have Snapchat filters, so if you're going to post while you're here, there's Team McLeod and Team Boyle Snapchat filters that you can post online. I'm going to introduce Team Boyle. So first, Professor Boyle. And then we have one of EA's very own, Hannah Marshall. Marty Powers. Has a fan crew here. And then last but not least, Mark Lewis.
Okay, for Team McLeod, I was going to introduce the students first, but let's introduce Professor McLeod first. Come on in. And on Team McLeod, we have Zidong Chen, Karim Karagaz, and Habia Noor.
Us. Thank you, Victoria. Welcome, everybody. Good evening. Immigration has been at the core of the United States since its inception in the 18th century. Indeed, its foundations go back to the 15th century when Columbus discovered America. My great-great-grandparents came to the United States from Scotland in the 1830s, and I am certain that nearly all of you are immigrants now or direct descendants from immigrants. Immigration is the heartbeat of the great melting pot. To selectively deny others the same opportunities of which we availed ourselves is philosophical and indeed moral hypocrisy. But this debate is not about the philosophical or the moral implications of immigration. It's about economics. Tonight, our team will demonstrate that immigration is necessary for a healthy domestic economy. We will show that the low-skilled labor market is very tight, with firms having difficulty finding workers to take their job offers. We will argue that relaxing immigration laws to make it easier for people to come to the United States and legally stay here will help the labor market to clear and not create either a loss of jobs or lower wages for existing workers, but instead will provide the necessary supply of labor to keep our domestic firms productive and profitable. In the high-skilled labor market, immigrants bring new ideas, technological prowess, and entrepreneurship that increases productivity and therefore wages. We will show that immigration is positively correlated with invention and innovation. Finally, those who argue that relaxing immigration laws increases security risks and raises the crime rate are wrong. Sadly, our domestic population provides plenty of terrorism as evidenced by the tragic attacks at Parkland, Florida, and Las Vegas, Nevada, and many others. We will show that immigrants do not increase the crime rate, except for the fact that they are often guilty of crimes in many cases simply because they are illegal immigrants. Relaxing immigration laws to extend visas and pave the road toward U.S. citizenship will ameliorate this problem. Our nation depends on immigration for a healthy, thriving economy, and we will argue that the thoughtful relaxation of many of the already stringent laws making immigration more difficult will result in a win-win situation for both domestic and foreign workers. Thank you.
Okay, one thing I forgot to say about the extra credit that you guys are getting, or most of you are getting, we'll give you instructions, fill out the bubbles for your student ID, but we also have some instructions at the very end, so make sure you stay for the entire debate. Okay, so leading off with the opening statement, Professor McLeod.
Right from the start, that strengthening immigration laws does not mean fewer immigrants. It means fewer illegal immigrants. Now, we are proposing some ideas that will make immigrants want to come here legally. We're going to increase the marginal benefit of being here legally while simultaneously increasing the marginal cost of being here illegally. And of course, that's good for America, but it's also good for the immigrants themselves and the communities in which they live. We have 3 students, each of whom is going to give you one little piece of our argument. Hannah's going to start out with specific reforms that we would make to our current broken system. It turns out that these reforms are self-funding, so we don't need to worry about can we afford them. We can. Next up, we have Marty, who's going to discuss the benefits to the labor market for both employees and employers. And he's going to talk about benefits to financial markets, especially insurance. Finally, we have Mark, who's going to talk about some of the more socio-economic aspects of our strengthened immigration laws. It turns out they're going to be good for the education levels of immigrants, and it's going to help them be involved in less crime. Of course, that's good for the immigrants, but it's also good for their communities and for America as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for the... Okay, so thank you for the opening statement, Austin. And starting off with Team McLeod is Zidon Chen.
Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the immigration and crime. When it comes to the topic of immigration, people always talk about the effect on the economy and on the crime. When we look at the fact and data, the truth is, immigration at least doesn't have a positive correlation with the crime rate. And even in some research papers, the evidence shows that they are negatively correlated with the crime rates after 1990s. So let's look at the graph, which illustrates the relationship between the violent crime rate and immigration share of population. The vertical axis is violent crime rate per 100,000 residents and immigrants per 100,000 residents. The horizontal axis is the time from 1970s to 2006. From 1970s to 1990s, the violent crime rate is increasing and immigrants' share of population is also increasing. That seems like there is a positive relationship between these two variables, right? However, that's not true. We can see a negative relationship between these two variables after 1990s. Thus, we can conclude either there is no relationship between violent crime rate and immigrants' share of population, or there is a negative relationship. Let's think about it. If immigrants are more likely to commit crimes than American-born population, more immigrants come to America would cause an increase in crime rate due to its higher than average. The fact is that with more immigrants, both documented and undocumented, we have a lower crime rate. The broad finding among criminologists and economists who study this topic is that immigrants are less crime-prone than native-born people. Now I want to talk about the media bias and stereotype. It's partially due to social media and news agencies often exaggerate the negative side of immigrants. Most of stories which survived and get spread by the public are the bad ones. Because of this survival bias, the stereotype of immigrants are very persistent. And almost all the social media, such as CNN, Times, Washington Times, have this bias. If we want the real answer, we need to look at the research paper instead of biased news. And as I mentioned at the first of my presentation, there's no significant positive relationship between violent crime rate and immigrants' share of population. Thirdly, we're not saying that immigrants don't commit crime. For those real illegal immigrants who commit crimes, they need to be handled properly. Some immigrants do commit crime, but so do some native-born people. We shouldn't use several extreme cases to represent the whole group. The more important fact is that most illegal immigrants are the people who come to the country without visa or an expired visa. Most of these people are working in this country right now. What government should do is to relax immigration laws, make visas last longer, and make the process easier for them. The situation right now is a small fraction of illegal immigrants commit crime, and the government strengthening immigration laws make it harder for immigrants to enter and keeping a large number of immigrants out of the country. And the majority of them are good, productive people who can participate in expanding and improving the economy of the United States. Here is some examples of these impressive immigrants. Albert Einstein, the co-founder of Google. And I can go on and on. And if you think about it, Superman is an illegal immigrant too. These illegal immigrants provide the United States with cooks, drivers, and nurses and other important jobs without lowering the productivity in other fields, such as in financial market, entrepreneurship, and innovation. Then we can conclude the benefit of relaxing immigration laws is greater than the cost. Thank you.
So now we're going to let Team Boyle have a rebuttal of a minute to kind of talk about some of the arguments that were just made. Yeah, so I'm going to start time now.
So a lot of your points kind of focused on, I'm sorry, illegal immigrants don't commit crimes. And our research would actually agree with you. We don't believe that illegal immigrants are committing crimes at a higher rates at all. Fortunately though, legal immigrants are much more likely to call the police when they are victimized. Illegal immigrants have a strong disincentive not to get the police involved whenever there's crime in their communities, when somebody robs them, when somebody harms them, and because of fear of being uncovered. We agree with you that illegal immigrants aren't committing more crimes, but we disagree that it will actually make the country a lot safer if all immigrants here are legal. And to your other point, as far as the impressive immigrants that you showed, Superman and other than Superman, I think all of those people came here legally. So it's still kind of to our point. But anyway, I think that's all I have.
Our first speaker from Team Boyle is going to be Hannah Marshall.
When it comes to immigration, we can all agree that we want a system that works for American citizens, immigrants, and of course businesses as well. But unfortunately, in its current state, our system is riddled with loopholes and full of inconsistencies and unfairness. In order to fix this, our team has come up with 3 main solutions. The first of which is shifting the focus from a family-based to a more merit-based immigration system, as Canada has done. The second is to reform the H-1B visa program. And our third main solution would be to find a financially feasible way to deal with the illegal immigration crisis. Our first solution, which talks about switching from a family-based to a merit-based system, focuses on making employment-based visas more prominent. Currently, 65% of the visas allocated each year are in the family-based category. This means the only requirement to get one of these visas is that you have a family member that already lives in the United States. Now, to all the immigrants, the educated and motivated ones that maybe want to come start a business here, to them who don't have a family member in the United States, this can be unfair. It's an advantage to those receiving family-based visas. So, in order to fix this, we're going to switch to education and employment-based things to decide on merit. As you can also see up here, with family-based visa recipients, many of them are in higher age brackets. Think of your grandmothers and aunts coming here. And then they also take more lower-skilled jobs in maybe farming, maintenance, more than American native-born citizens or even employment-based visa recipients are. The other thing with a family-based focus is that it gives the rise to the issue of chain migration. This is when an immigrant brings their family, who brings their family, etc., and etc. Right now, the average multiplier across all nations is roughly 3.46. But when we look at some other countries like China or the Philippines, the multiplier can be as high as 6. So for one Chinese immigrant coming over, they can bring up to even 6 family members with them over time. This can lead to vast quantities of immigrants coming from certain nations, which decreases diversity. So to solve this, we're going to shift the proportions, not the number of visas given out, but the proportions more towards employment-based over family-based. This will have more educated immigrants coming in, and it will also be a more fair system by getting rid of the advantage of having a family member over here, a more fair system. Our second proposed solution talks about reforming the H-1B visa program through which skilled immigrants seek employment in the United States. Today, only 20,000 of the H-1B visas provided annually are reserved for those receiving a postgraduate degree at an American university. If we were to increase the education requirements for H-1B visas, we would be able to benefit American universities as well as American employers by bringing in that stronger, greater, younger talent pool. Another way that we could improve the H-1B visa program is through closing loopholes. One of these loopholes is allowing outsourcing firms to game the system. As you can see up here, more of the H-1B visas per year are going to outsourcing firms than other American firms who have less resources or maybe time to compete with them. So again, over here, the first way to do this is by flooding the applicant pool. Just Indian-based outsourcing firms alone put in roughly 200,000 applications each year. Since only 80,000 can be selected, and they are on a first-come, first-served basis, these outsourcing firms net a very large amount of the visas and crowd out American companies like Deloitte or Microsoft who really need those tech jobs from H-1B visa recipients. Then, once they bring in the H-1B visa recipients in these outsourcing firms, they also undercut American workers by paying their workers less. You can see that those at outsourcing firms receive far below the market rate when compared to American firm employees. This makes it cost-effective for American firms to outsource labor, thus hurting American workers and still also hurting immigrant workers because they're receiving less than their worth. So by fixing this, we can, one, improve the education level of the immigrants coming in, and then two, by closing the loopholes, we're making a more secure system and having better wages and working conditions for those coming over here and for the American workers. Our final reform has to do with handling illegal immigration. There are 11 million undocumented immigrants in the country, and 66% of them have been here for more than 10 years. They've built their lives here, and it's almost impossible logistically and financially to get rid of them. So what we propose is amnesty. We provide amnesty for all current illegal immigrants. Through this, we're strengthening laws by finally cracking down on illegal immigration, by documenting them and making sure they get the safety in their communities, as well as the social security and other benefits that they deserve. They are not second-class citizens, and by relaxing immigration laws, we assert that it would be more likely for them to keep their illegal status and be hiding in sanctuary cities in fear. So it is imperative that we strengthen immigration laws to benefit American citizens, immigrants, and businesses. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a rebuttal from Team McLeod.
Well, I want to thank Hannah for her valid points and her research. And I'd like to say that as a team, we do agree with the other team that there needs to be a reform. However, it needs to be on the other side. It needs to be relaxed. For example, separating families and immigrants can lead to worker inefficiency. Just think about seeing your family only once or twice a year. You know, you will have to FaceTime them, you'll have to Skype them. How can you focus on your work at the same time worrying about how your families, how your kids doing at school, and things like that? Also, if you prevent family migration, it will lead to workers sending their earnings outside of the country, thus outside of the American economy, to support their families. Thus, the additional income that would be earned in terms of the government level would be missed out on. Additionally, with more immigrants present here, the more money is spent, thus livening the economy, such as your basic needs, healthcare, education, things like that. But we do agree with the other team that they do earn less. They would like to earn more, but however, it is a fact that they earn less. And also, they are living from paycheck to paycheck, so they're more likely to spend all of their money as soon as they get there. However, research done at Cornell University suggests that immigration has no negative effects on overall wages and employment of native-born workers, and that's very important to note. H-1B requirements require immigrants to at least have a bachelor's degree or equivalent experience in the field, so I also fail to see the point in raising the requirement. Lastly, family members that come here with H-1B holders come under H-4 visas, which don't allow them to work, so we should let them work, thus they can contribute more to the economy, and hence relaxing the immigration laws. And I will address the labor market side in my speech later on. Thank you. So my focus is on the low-skilled labor market. As current data shows, the labor market is tight. But what does that mean? It means that there are job openings created every day that are not being filled. Jobs, if filled, will lead to more production and thus economic growth. The Bureau of Labor Statistics estimated job growth to be around 7.4% from 2016 to 2026, which implies this positive trend in job creation is going to be sustained for the next 8 years. Looking at the supply of labor, the labor force participation rate has been dropping until late 2015 and is currently staying around below average levels, and the BLS predicts that it is going to be dropping during the next 6 years. This is in line with the population growth rate decreasing and baby boomers retiring. All this would mean that with positive predictions of job growth, the labor market tightness problem is only going to get worse. Here's a graph of the situation. There we go. We have our equilibrium point in the middle, denoted with E, where supply of workers meets demand. However, we're currently at Q double star on the right, where the quantity demanded is significantly higher than the quantity supplied. Now, in order for the market to reach equilibrium, we would expect an increase in wages, but wages are sticky. So the economy will be damaged until the wage increase can actually occur. An alternative is to relax immigration laws, making it easier for immigrants to come to the United States and work here, which would create a positive supply shock, thus creating a new equilibrium point. Strengthening immigration laws with bills such as the RAISE Act, which plans on cutting legal immigration by half, would actually make the situation worse by pushing the supply of workers further left on our graph, worsening the labor shortage, and making it harder for us to reach equilibrium. Also, an article in the Wall Street Journal says the H-2B visas issued for low-skilled seasonal foreign workers are typically employed by landscaping companies, Alaskan fisheries, ski resorts, and vacation spots, including some of President Donald Trump's properties. The article also says that backers say the program provides needed foreign workers, often in remote locations where Americans are scarce. This is particularly important as the unemployment rate is very low at 4.1%. On our graph, we can see that the demand for low-skilled foreign workers has been increasing since 2011. And considering we are only in April, it is on track to surpass previous years. Lastly, keeping the decrease in labor force participation rate and market tightness in mind, we can look at what these immigrants actually do. Some of the most popular jobs include miscellaneous agricultural workers, daycare workers, cashiers. These amounts on the right-hand side are legal amounts, which means that a legal immigrant at their best would be earning these amounts annually. However, illegal immigrants working in the underground economy with bad conditions and even lower wages. According to data, the supply of labor by illegal immigrants is inelastic, meaning that illegal immigrants are willing to work about the same amount when wages are lower. unlike native-born or legal immigrants. Also, 62% of illegal immigrants don't have any access to healthcare insurance, and 33% of them are under the poverty line. This implies that even in these tough conditions, they still work hard and are a crucial part of our economy as a whole. Thank you.
Now we'll have a rebuttal by Team Boyle.
Thank you. A lot of the things that we've been talking about, it seems that everyone's agreeing on. So I will continue that pattern and agree with you that there's a lot of things that we want to do that are similar to yours. But there's a better way of doing it, and that involves strengthening immigration. So basically, you're right. The shadow economy isn't good for workers, and I'll address that in my speech in just a minute. And we also want to clarify that strengthening immigration does not mean less immigrants in America, which is the point that you brought up. And another thing is a lot of your graphs are predictions of what will happen in the future. If we could predict what's going to happen in the future, I'd be betting on the stock market and making a lot of money. Additionally, you talked about how that there's tight labor markets, and that is a temporary phenomenon in the post-recession era, and that will change over time. We shouldn't make permanent policies based on a temporary phenomenon. Additionally, the tight labor markets can be good by putting upward pressure on wages. So overall, the current phenomenon is not going to affect the policy that we should decide for our future. And also, we agree on certain points, and I'll explain why strengthening immigration in my speech is actually better to solve these issues that you brought up. Thank you. Strengthening immigration regulation is the only way that we can ensure that everyone in America is protected and accounted for. Without empowering the appropriate authorities to make sure that they're carrying out their duties, people will fall through the cracks. Right now, there's an estimated 11 million undocumented people living in America forced to live in the shadows. And this is an issue because of years of altering and changing immigration policy from administration to administration. We want to change that by creating an appropriate incentive scheme to get these people out of the shadows and into the broader aspects of our economy. What is OSHA? OSHA is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. OSHA is responsible for working with employers to ensure on-site safety and that work sites are compliant with federal law. We want to empower OSHA to ensure that all workers on sites are documented workers. This will not only protect the workers who are currently undocumented at higher risk of being injured, but also ensure that they will actually be documented workers, not undocumented workers. If we appropriately integrate these people into the economy, the undocumented workers will actually have a lot to gain, and the American workers within the economy will have a lot to gain. If these undocumented workers were to be hired at a minimum wage, it would make them more competitive or less competitive with American workers who are being undercut by their under-the-table wages that they're currently receiving. Additionally, this would make American labor more valuable and increase employment rates for them. So it would be a good policy for immigrants and Americans. Once we disassemble the shadow labor market, things start to flush out better for America. As these workers are documented and properly accounted for, we can follow their income and tax them more effectively. Let me do some math. If you take the average income of immigrant workers currently times their tax rate times the total number over their average household size, you get $46.2 billion. $46.2 billion to fund our new immigration program that Hannah mentioned, $46.2 million to fund OSHA, Immigration, Customs and Enforcement, the Border Patrol, and other branches of the government that we see fit to deal with immigration matters. We could take this $46.2 billion and give it back to Americans, billion dollars back to Americans in the form of a tax rebate. We could take the $46.2 billion and spend it however the taxpayer sees fit. So far, I've demonstrated to you how these policies are good for immigrants or Americans, but what I'm really trying to get to is explain how what's good for immigrants is actually good for us. If these immigrants are allowed to access our financial markets, they could open bank accounts, credit cards, get loans for mortgages, cars, houses, 401ks, college funds, retirement funds. Giving these undocumented workers access to our system will not only benefit our larger financial markets, but will also help these people save their retirement and invest in their children's future, and most importantly, pursue the American dream. We can instate policies to ensure that these immigrants get involved in insurance programs. If we increase the size of the people involved in the insurance market, it spreads the risk over a larger group, bringing down premiums for everyone, which will save money for people already in the program that are American citizens, and also provide affordable health care to everyone who is an immigrant who is going to join these programs, as opposed to going to the emergency room where most of them receive their care currently, and is more expensive for taxpayers. The United States is a government made by the people for the people, and the composition of America has changed over time, but our values haven't. We appreciate hard work, we appreciate dedication. We look out for the underdog and hope for their success. And if these people want to come to our country and make their future, we want to allow them to do that, but in a legal way. And doing less than what we're doing right now, decreasing the amount of work that we're putting into our system, is not going to create a positive change. The only way we could positively influence the current immigration system is by stepping up and doing the right thing and taking action. And that action is strengthening our immigration policies. Strengthening our immigration policies will be good for Americans, immigrants, and the United States as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, Professor McLeod, rebuttal.
Okay, nice job, Marty. So, I'm thinking that it's difficult to rebut something that we agree with. It seems like we're having a little bit of an agreement problem this evening. Making these illegal immigrants legal is exactly what we're trying to argue for. Okay, so yeah, the illegal immigrants are making lower wages, and if we make them legal, guess what's going to happen? The economics predicts that the supply of labor would increase and the overall wages would drop. You've got a group working for lower wages, a group working for higher wages. You're going to come into a middle area somewhere. Okay, so yeah, that's not going to sit well with legal immigrants and with natives who are making higher wages, who might see their wages go down. But they're not the only people involved. There are winners and losers to all policy, and when wages drop, the firms are better off. As we know from microeconomics, firms are going to substitute labor for capital and create more jobs, and they're also going to have lower costs, which is going to mean they're going to want to produce more quantities and hire even more people. So we're going to stimulate and increase jobs. It's not only just good for the firms, but it's going to lower, since it lowers the cost of firms, it's going to lower the price of output, which is going to be important for the people who buy those products that the firms make. So we may see, what we want to do is, we agree we want to make these illegal immigrants legal by making it easier for them to extend their visas and become documented and relax those laws that prevent that. And we're okay with wage going down a little bit, because if it does, and we're going to argue in the high school labor market that it won't in just a minute, but the benefits to the firms and to the people who buy the products from the firms have to be taken into account in such a policy. Okay, so that's it.
Okay, Hadia Noor.
How many of us have flipped the contents of one half of our Chobani cups into the other? How many of us have gone back to our dorm rooms and been almost too keen to put one of these in our microwaves? How many of us carry on laptops or use computers on a daily basis without accounting for their processors? How many of us got lost on our first time on campus and frantically pulled up Google Maps on our phones, and throughout the rest of that same day used Chrome or Google Docs or Gmail? Almost all of us. And what do all of these have in common? They're the inventions of immigrants. Take the examples I mentioned. Chobani was founded by a Turkish man, Google by a Russian, Intel by a Hungarian, and Kraft by a Canadian. This list doesn't even begin to include others such as Tesla or eBay and the average freshman's most beloved Panda Express. Here you can also see a few others of the most common names in the business world and where the founders behind them came from. Now, while these are just some commercial examples that come to mind, the beneficial entrepreneurial impact of immigrants stretches much, much further into roughly 50% of Fortune 500 companies, not to mention the billion-dollar private startups, also referred to as unicorns, where it is estimated that 51% had one or more immigrant involved in its startup process. These are not, however, surprising statistics, as according to the Kaufman Index of Entrepreneurial Activity, in 2014, immigrants were almost twice as likely as the native-born to become entrepreneurs. And while this is impressive, what is even more so is the sheer amount of revenue that these immigrant entrepreneurs generate through their innovative creations. In fact, the Partnership for a New American Economy estimates that immigrant-owned businesses generate more than $775 billion in revenue, $125 billion in payroll, and $100 billion in income. Neither America nor the rest of the world would be able to benefit today from the inventions of these immigrant entrepreneurs if they hadn't decided to come to this country to extend their ideas to the rest of the world. Historically, innovations and inventions have been the most important contributor to the growth of living standards of the average American, and immigrants have evidently been at the very forefront of this. Strengthening the already strict immigration laws is not a smart way to proceed if we wish to continue to see the same or even higher increases in revenue and creativity. In most cases, immigrant entrepreneurs are only able to get their businesses off the ground after first gaining permanent residence, then obtaining a green card, a process that can take anywhere from 5 to 10 years or more. This also makes investors a whole lot less likely to put their trust in a company, and there is no guarantee if the entrepreneur behind the company will even be able to remain in the country. With these numbers, however, understandably comes the argument that immigrant labor causes a permanent depression of wage rates in the country. But in reality, wage rates are driven up in the long term by the entrance of immigrants into the country's markets in two main ways. First, immigrants and native workers tend to differ in the amount and type of education they have received, the occupations in which they work, and the skill sets they possess. Thus, the jobs that both immigrants and natives perform are complementary. This is simply because a diversity of skill sets is needed in order to maximize productivity. This increase in productivity affects natives as well as foreign workers, which in turn increases the wages of both parties. Second, the addition of immigrant workers to the labor force stimulates new investment in the economy, which in turn increases the demand for labor, exerting, again, upward pressure on wages. Ottaviano and Perry, in their paper, Rethinking the Gains from Immigration, found that on average, the real wages of U.S. foreign workers increased by roughly 2% between the years 1980 and 2000. Keeping in mind that this was a time of increasing immigration, as can be seen on the graph, there is no evidence of the depression of wage rates for native-born workers as a result of immigration. And so, with the undeniable combined effects of an increase in productivity and investment in the economy, wages have the potential to increase even further in the future. Therefore, again, strengthening the already stringent immigration laws has no logical backing if the U.S. wants to see significant growth in either productivity or wages in the future.
Now we're going to have a rebuttal from Team Boyle.
That I appreciate your perspective. I 100% agree with you that immigrants are innovative. They're great, they're smart and intelligent. When they come over here, they bring their cultural backgrounds and ideas, their different upbringings and educations, and are able to complement the American workforce and even be the founder of businesses like Kraft and Intel, like you were saying. However, by relaxing immigration laws, we're really opening the floodgates for low-skilled workers to come in. This is because we're removing the requirements and restrictions that we've built into the system, and so by nature, there are more low-skilled than high-skilled people out there. So many applications for low-skilled workers will come in, and those few gems that we're talking about, the Sergey Brims, the Elon Musks, they'll be dissuaded from applying, or because the system takes too long, or they'll be buried underneath all of those applications. If we bring in low-skilled workers, it's not going to have those really great effects with benefits and all the revenue like you were talking about. It'll be a much different story. This is why we must strengthen immigration laws instead. By strengthening the immigration laws, adding those restrictions and requirements, making sure that we expand the employment-based visas, the education-based programs like our solution was talking about, will increase the number of H-1B visas and the amount of highly educated people that can come in. And we'll be able to say to those Elon Musks, hey, look, we have this special avenue built right for you. Come bring your business, bring your ideas to our economy, and incentivize them to come here instead of allow them to get lost into the mix of low-skill applicants that would be brought over if we relax the laws. Thank you.
And last but not least, Mark Lewis.
There's an immigrant community in Kenya called the Kakuma Refugee Camp. It's home to over 185,000 immigrants and refugees. This camp offers an information technology course to its young women. There's an accelerated learning program for overage learners to learn the skills and knowledge they need to earn a living in a changing world. All 185,000 residents are guaranteed at least a minimum nutritional intake every single day. While Kenya deserves an applause for its effort, the real story here is that America should be embarrassed. Kenya is a developing nation with less than $1,500 GDP per capita. America's is over $57,000. While Kakuma is by no means perfect, Kenya has made a real effort to take care of its immigrants. Surely our country could learn a thing or two from theirs. America needs to strengthen immigration laws so that our immigrant friends can have all of the rights, privileges, and opportunities that our native-born citizens have. You see, the problem is that America's illegal immigrants are afraid of being uncovered, and it's actually keeping them from using some of the public goods and services that their tax dollars are paying for. These people are paying into the system, an estimated $15 billion annually. But they're being cheated from reaping the benefits. The best course of action we can take to give them what they deserve is implementing a stronger immigration system so that every single person who lives within these borders, from sea to shining sea, doesn't have to feel like they must hide in the shadows. And the only way our immigrants will ever feel like they don't have to hide anymore is by making sure that everyone residing in this country is registered and accounted for. Many immigrants to our southern border hire hardened outlaws called coyotes to sneak them into America. These coyotes, often with ties to Mexican drug cartels, charge $5,000 to $6,000 for their services. Their clients are left completely vulnerable to sex trafficking, violence, and dangerous, sometimes fatal travel conditions. If instead we had an expanded, stronger policy that allowed immigrants to pay us those fees instead, we would have a self-funding system that keeps these travelers safe and brings them to America on our terms. Once they are here, the injustices are far from over. Illegal immigrants have a strong incentive to avoid places like hospitals, airports, and even post offices, out of fear of being discovered. Even if their children are enrolled in public school, parents are hesitant to be involved in their educations, their kids are less likely to participate in extracurriculars, and the quality of their schooling suffers as a result. If we can strengthen our laws to make sure that every immigrant is a legal one, we can rest assured that every American living on this soil has access to the same public goods and services that everyone else has. Immigrants are getting the short end of the stick in the workforce too. Without employment laws and the minimum wage to protect them, illegal immigrants are subject to extremely low wages and horrible working conditions. They work long, hard hours without much to show for it at the end of the day. If we had a more complete and accurate list of everyone who works hard in this country, we could ensure that everyone is on the same playing field and that nobody is getting taken advantage of. Living outside of the law can be extremely dangerous for illegal immigrants. These people are obviously not very likely to get the police involved when they are victimized, which leaves them with no way of seeking justice. The result? Hundreds of immigrant communities that are essentially law enforcement no man's lands, drained and battered from years of little to no policing. America is a country with law and order. We must do everything we can to make sure that every single person in this country is protected by the men and women in our police forces. This cannot happen if some people are afraid to pick up the phone. Strengthening our immigration policy is the best way we can ensure that everyone living in this country has equal rights and opportunities. The Kakuma refugee camp is not perfect, but it did get one thing right. Immigrants are not second-class citizens, and it's time we stop treating them like they are. We must tighten our immigration system so that every American can live the American dream. Thank you.
Team McLeod with the rebuttal.
The first thing I want to say is I totally agree with your amazing statement of reforming the immigration laws. And however, the thing is, our topic tonight is strengthening and relaxing the immigration laws. For your examples of illegal immigrants are less likely to call the police. So what government should do? Should government just to deport them? No, that's cost too much and do harm to our economy. So what they should do is to make the process for illegal immigrants who has an expired visa or has no visa easier. As my teammate and I mentioned a few minutes ago, the benefit of relaxing immigration laws is far greater than the cost. That's it. Thank you.
But now we're going to have a closing statement by Professor McLeod. Oh, by Alston. I took them out of order. Boyle.
So Professor McLeod is going to sing you a song. He's going to go last, so I'm going now. My applause. How many of you are here for extra credit tonight? I see some hands not clapping. So if you came to see support of Trump's wall, sorry about that. Professor McLeod trolled you. He wrote that on the tickets. That wasn't our team. You may have noticed that both teams have supported stronger immigration laws. More immigrants. But the question is really, how are we going to do it, right? We've shown immigrants are good for the economy. It's been unequivocal. There's no economic defense of Trump's wall. The question is, if we're going to let immigrants in, how do you want to do it? Do you want to do it their way? Do you want to let anybody come from anywhere, go anywhere, do who knows what? Or do you want our approach with a little bit more structure? We just want you to apply. We just want to know a little bit about who you are and what you're doing. We ask the same of our native-born citizens. I have a government-issued ID with my photograph and my address on it. I file taxes every year. The government knows what my profession is and how much money I make. I'm not trying to invade the privacy of immigrants. I just want them to be held to the same standard as native-born citizens. You've seen how all of our policies tonight are good, not just for America, but also the individual immigrants and their communities. And this has been we're doing great, you're doing great, high five, yeah, I agree with your statement type of night. And I'm going to take the opportunity to say that I like what you've had to say. Their ideas are an improvement over our current system. I'm not going to lie. They're an improvement. But while their ideas are good, ours are better. Thank you.
say you guys did a really wonderful job, and I'd like to congratulate all the participants here, including the sound man. Thank you very much. This evening I am here to tell you why relaxing immigration laws we can't deny will make our economy really grow. Maybe you heard it on the news that the immigration gives our economy the blues, but here's a thing or two that you might not know. Statistics show the labor market's tight. There's lots of jobs available and that's alright, but not enough workers to make the labor market clear. Immigrants have an elastic supply. They work for pennies, and that is why we must relax the law so they can come from over there to over here. The relaxation of immigration will help the labor force participation. Yeah, what we really need are new ideas. They've demonstrated that it's clear. Many of our industries started overseas. So many products that you use might never be invented by the me's and you's. So maybe we should think about lowering the visa fee. Yeah, immigration makes us a stronger nation. The population needs the innovation. Yes, immigrants aren't criminals unless our laws make it so. Let's make it easier for them to contribute and help our economy grow. And I wouldn't worry that the immigrants will steal the jobs that you want to do, unless picking fruit and changing diapers sounds like a dream come to you. Unless picking fruit and changing diapers sounds like a dream come true.
So much for all coming and listening to what our debaters had to say. Thank you to you guys for participating in this debate. That's really what makes it feasible for us to put this event on every year. So what matters now, pull out your cell phone. If you go to this link, you can cast your vote, whether that be for team relaxing or team strengthening. I'll leave this up here for a moment.
And also the Scantron little trick that I told you about in the beginning of the debate, fill out D.
Wait, no,
The Scantron.
I put something else on the slide.
Oh, sorry. Check that.
Okay. Or do you want to do D?
I already got E voted in.
Okay. E?
E.
E as in elephant, or economics.
E for economics. For immigrants.
Okay. For emigrate? Okay. What? Where? On the Scantron, number one.
Number one.
That's a true Penn State question right there. Okay. Moving on. Did everyone cast their votes? No? There you go. What? I have a clicker. I guess I can do this now. Can you pass me the shirts? So we've done this for 13 years with the econ department, and Professor McLeod's been involved for this long, but I don't think we've ever given them the proper thank you for being involved. So this year we are giving you guys some EA merch. So I guessed your sizes and I didn't want to offend anyone, so I went one smaller. So if they don't fit, let me know and we're happy to exchange those for you. Yeah. I also have a fear of people singing near me, so I overcame that today. Obviously for Scantrons, bubble in E instead. Yes. Bubble in E for economics.
Yes.
You've already bubbled in D, you can bubble in E as well. You can
Yeah.
apply for a raise.
Chad, do you have anything else or?
No, thank you all for coming, and thanks for supporting the Penn State Economics Association.
This is for you, Chad. Oh, if you want to know the results.
All right, who
Yeah,
won?
Sorry, they're on my phone.
We'll tell you who won.
Wait, I have one. I'll tell you.
2 to 1, 3 to 1.
So the vote officially was 273 in favor of strengthening and 301 in favor of relaxing. So team
close.
relaxation won.
Really close.
Thank you guys.
Okay.